A bus driver rushing to a city on a stormy evening rescues a little girl who tells him her mom is unconscious a mile away. Little does he know how soon his kindness will come back to him. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. It might brighten their day and inspire them to do good. Also keep watching because an important lesson awaits at the end of the video. Amidst the frigid gusts accompanying the heavy snowfall and thick layers of ice on the road, David was rushing to get to the city. He couldn't believe that he'd been driving all the way there with the cracked windshield and had no idea how long it would take him. But David had little choice. He was heading there for a job interview as he needed a second job to be able to afford a lawyer for his teenage son, Brian, who was innocent and a victim of frame-up. Brian was always a good kid, and David knew he'd never do anything wrong. To save his son, David risked his life and decided to drive miles away in a snowstorm to another city where the interview was. However, as he approached the intersection, David abruptly came to a halt. He looked out the window and saw a tiny silhouette walking towards the lamppost on the road amidst the heavy snow. As the tiny figure came into view, David realized it was a little girl who appeared terrified and paralyzed with fear. There were no strangers around her, and she soon sat under the light, sobbing uncontrollably. David knew he'd most likely miss the interview, but he couldn't leave the young girl alone on the deserted street in the heavy snowstorm. So he got off his bus and approached her. "Hello, little miss. Are you okay? What are you doing here alone?" he asked, and she looked up at him scared. "It's just so. Mommy is in danger." Mommy is not answering. "Hey, can you please help us?" "Oh, of course, of course. What happened to your hand, by the way?" he asked, noticing it was bruised. "Mommy and I," she sniffed, "were coming home from Gamma's house, and the car, it just crashed. Mommy is just so hurt, and I am so scared and so cold." Jesus! David took off his coat and placed it around the girl's shoulders. "Can you take me to your mommy, sweetheart?" he asked. "I can call the ambulance and help her." The little girl nodded. "I think she's that way," she replied, pointing her finger away. "I got my bus parked right here. Let's get in there, honey. It's freezing here. You can tell me the directions while I drive, all right?" he told her. "Okay," said the little girl with a nod. So, after rescuing Mia, 5, from the snowstorm, David took her to his bus, and through her distorted directions, a mile later, he noticed a car crashed into a pole. "That's Mommy's car. I was worried, so I went around asking for help," cried Mia. Before getting out, David called 911. Then he dashed to the car, where he discovered Mia's mother, unconscious and severely injured in the driver's seat. David helped her out of the car and onto the bus. When the paramedics arrived, he locked his bus and accompanied Mia and her mother to the hospital. The woman's phone, discovered in her car, was dead, and he didn't want to leave Mia alone. "Will Mommy be okay, David?" Mia inquired as they sat outside her hospital room. "I'm just worried." "Oh, darling." "Yes, don't worry," he reassured her, though he wasn't sure. He hoped everything would go well and her mother would recover. "Dear Lord," he prayed silently, "help the poor woman. Her little daughter is asking you for help. Please stand by their side." Thankfully, David's prayers were answered. A couple of hours later, he received word from the doctors that Mia's mother, Laura, had regained consciousness and was out of danger. As David and Mia visited Laura, the little girl ran to her mother and hugged her. "Mommy, you okay?" she asked. "David helped us, Mommy." Laura looked at David with grateful eyes and thanked him. "Thank you, David," she said. "I heard from the doctors you brought me here. I just can't thank you enough for it." "That wasn't a problem, ma'am," said David with a smile. "If it weren't for Mia's help, I would have never been able to assist you. She's a bright kid." Laura smiled weakly. "You're a kind man, David," she said suddenly. "I can say that with confidence." Again, "That was okay," he said. "You need not mention it. The cops will be here soon. It was an accident, so—" "I know," she said. "I'll take care of it." "If you don't mind," he added, "how did your car crash? You were in a pretty bad state when I found you." I couldn't see what was ahead of me, David. With the heavy snow and the fact that I was tired, driving from my mother's house, yeah, I wasn't careful enough. But what about you? What were you doing in the midst of a snowstorm? At this time, the entire city is supposed to be indoors. Oh well, I was on my way to a job interview in another city. No way. Did you miss it because of me? Oh no, I feel awful. Don't worry. It just wasn't meant to be. I feel bad that I won't be able to assist my son. I needed to get him a lawyer and the money, but... A lawyer? Asked Laura. I can help with that. Trust me. It turned out Laura was a professional lawyer, and she was a pro in her field. David told her about Brian's case, and she agreed to help him out. The poor bus driver couldn't stop crying when she said she wouldn't charge a single dime from him because he had saved her life. It was her way of returning his kindness. And well, thanks to her help, Brian was acquitted. He was falsely accused by a group of teenagers from the same school as him, and eventually those mean teenagers had to pay for their actions. Meanwhile, David, who was a single dad to Brian, proudly walked out of the court with his son. Right had triumphed over wrong, and David's kindness had found its way back to him.